All right, the final section of chapter 10 is on Muslim culture, and it's section number 3. So today we're going to be looking at some of the ways that, of course, Islam spread into different cities, and then some of the cultural practices, some things that make Muslim culture unique. So Roman numeral 1 talks about Muslim society and the rise of Muslim cities such as Damascus, Syria, Baghdad in Iraq, which became sort of the new epicenter of the Islamic world, Cordoba, which is in southern Spain, Cairo, Egypt, and even Jerusalem. All of these had some portions at least controlled or constructed by the Muslim people. Now, Baghdad had a population near 1 million. I'd like to show you a quick chart here. You can see that Baghdad's population really overwhelmed those around them. Constantinople was far short. Rome had fallen way below Baghdad at this time. Cordoba in Spain was, on the rise. But Baghdad's population around the time period of 900 was very significant. They did divide people up into 4 basic social classes, and that would be the upper class would be number 1. These are any people that are born as a Muslim. So if you're born a Muslim practitioner, you are in the upper class. The second class would be anybody who converted to the Muslim practice or Islamic faith. The third class were known as the protected peoples. These are the Christians, the Jews, and the Zoroastrians. They're all monotheistic faiths. And so because they believe in one God and not polytheistic practices, they were given that upper hand status against the lower class. The lower class was basically made up of slaves that performed domestic work or would be people who were forced to fight in the army. Now, the role of women is something that is controversial in the culture of Islam. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. Women were generally expected to submit to men. Sharia law did allow men to have up to 4 wives as long as they could provide housing, food, and clothing for them. Some women worked the fields alongside their husbands if they were poor. Others, which would be mostly the rich, would supervise domestic servants within their home. Now, women were expected to cover their faces with veils if they went into public. They were expected to do this based on passages that mandated it from the Quran. And the process of covering the body and face is called the hijab. This is still something that's practiced in Muslim-controlled areas today. Roman numeral 2 talks about Muslim scholarship and extending knowledge. Learning was essential in the Muslim culture. Learning and knowledge were big components to Muslims. Though Muhammad was not formally educated as a child, he believed it was one of the keys to happiness. Because of all of this, there was a special place in Baghdad created called the House of Wisdom. It was basically a library, a school or an academy of learning, and also a translation center. The Arabic Muslim practitioners did a lot of translating some of the ancient texts into other languages so that they could be dispersed and read, and then that educational practice continued on. Without the Muslim people doing this, we would have lost a lot of our knowledge and a lot of our ancient texts. Scholars from around the world would actually come to Baghdad to meet there and also to study. And it was very similar to what we could say an early university. Roman numeral 3 will talk about how art and science flourish under Muslim culture. Poetry in the Arabic lands can be traced all the way back to the Bedouins, which we learned about in section 1. The Quran is the standard for all Arabic literature. One of the most popular and major works is called The 1001 Nights. It was a collection of fairy tales, parables, and legends. Technically, it was about a king that married a new woman every day and killed her the next day. Eventually, he married a woman who told him stories for 1001 nights until he realizes that he loves her. What she would do in the book is she would always leave some type of cliffhanger to where he would want to know what was going to happen next. Now, that's the story. This is not a true fact. It's just a piece of literature. Now, Muslim art and architecture is also something that was going on during this time. Muslims believed that only Allah can create life. Therefore, images of human beings were actually discouraged, including images of Muhammad, actually prohibited, basically. Number 2 is calligraphy. Calligraphy is beautiful, careful, ornate, and neat handwriting. Most of my students are fairly young, but possibly when you eventually get married, you may either print off your invitations or sometimes you could go to a calligrapher who would hand write the invitations, and oftentimes you might find that it looks very much like a printer did it. It's actually a very talented skill that some folks have. Muslim artists would also practice woodwork, glasswork, ceramic work, and also textiles, which are clothing, okay? Muslim architecture would blend with the Roman and Byzantine styles, and then medical advances would probably be one of the biggest things that you could take from Muslim culture. They had many doctors, many great books about different medical practices and procedures. One of the greatest physicians in the world at the time was Al-Razi, and his work creating medical books was phenomenal. Math and science would be one of the final things that we talk about here today. Two things were introduced by the Muslims. One, they relied on scientific observation and experimentation. So they utilized the old Greek ways of logic, reasoning, the scientific method, which actually roots in Aristotle in a popular sense. And then also the ability to find mathematical solutions to older problems, especially with architecture and engineering. Thank you.